and all the purpose of us doing that is to promote their coming back here as soon as possible, not to mention now, alive and well. So we're trusting you to carry this message to this world. And yeah, we will begin. I will also mention just before I hand Noam the the microphone that this this conversation is recorded, and we will send you the WhatsApp link to the update group that where we are publishing it. So you're more than welcome to use this recording afterwards. And we also ask you kindly to send us the links of the publications. I will write you my phone number to which you can send this link. And this is it. Thank you again all for joining us. And once again, I will ask you to please open your cameras. It does make a very big difference for all of us. We're here on the human level. We're sharing very deep emotions and stories, and it's important that we do it to faces. So thank you for the cooperation. And
Thomas Hand reunited with his daughter Emily, and we saw another family as well who were reunited, a father with his family at the border crossing. But as I said, there are believed to be more family members inside the Sheba Medical Center. And again, it's really been stressed to us over and over and over again, Caitlin, how important it is for the families to have privacy in this moment, and for them at this stage to try to break the news to their children, to their loved ones, to their relatives about what happened on October 7th, because crucially, many of the hostages have no real sense of the full scope of what took place on October 7th. And that's why so much care has gone into ensuring that the media is kept at a distance, that there's a degree of privacy, but also that the appropriate staffing and psychiatrists and social workers are in place, and also a lot of guidelines that were given to the IDF in terms of how they handled the hostages when they first were there during that initial handover from the Red Cross. They did a cursory medical search and checking their identities. They were told not to answer questions such as where is mommy, where is daddy, to ask permission of any children before trying to pick them up. And so every possible care has been taken here and also at the Schneider Children's Medical Center where we were last night to try to minimize any sort of re-traumatizing, particularly of these children as they return home. And many of them no longer have homes, but return home to Israel for the first time in 7 weeks, Caitlin.
Yeah, and Clarissa, just to set the scene for people who are just watching, we are just shy of 4 a.m. here in Israel, and we just watched 4 vans that are carrying those hostages who are part of that second group to be released arrive there at the Sheba Medical Center here in Israel to undergo these evaluations, where we know they have a lot of questions, a lot of tests for these people who have been held. Most of them, we believe, from what we've been hearing, underground for nearly 50 days in Gaza after being kidnapped in that brutal day on October 7th. And Clarissa, something you said earlier that stood out to me was that officials at these hospitals here in Tel Aviv, in Israel, have been preparing for a month for this very evening, for this very moment of these hostages to arrive, and going to great lengths to make sure that for these people who have been through hell, that they can be as comfortable as possible and not feel like they're walking into this, kind of sterile hospital room.
Yeah, I mean, it was very striking. He said they've been doing drills and they didn't know exactly what the scenario would look like, but they wanted to try to be prepared for any possibility. And I don't know if we still have that photograph or if we can pull it up of what the room here, or one of the rooms for the children looks like here, but it really doesn't look like a hospital, honestly. You can see they've taken a lot of care to put toys and wash kits, and wash kits is such a simple thing, but it's so important because often when hostages are held in these types of conditions, they don't have privacy. They don't have the ability to do simple things like have a shower or brush their teeth. Again, we don't know the details of the circumstances in which these hostages were held, but we do know that it is so important arriving here for this to feel like a warm space, like an intimate space, like a quiet, safe space. And you can see with the way they've done the beds with different covers and toys that a lot of care has been taken and a lot of thought has been put into how to try to do that and make it a safe space. And we saw also videos that have come out from the Schneider Medical Center of some of those family reunions. There's one with a father with his son, and he's hugging him and holding him and saying, we're just going to stay here for a couple of days because the doctors want to be sure everything's okay, and then we're going to go home, and you have no idea how many presents everyone has brought for you. And so I think there's just a real appreciation of the fact that even though this is good news, and even though this is a beautiful reunion for these families, these lives have been changed forever. And this is not a scenario where you can wave a magic wand and make everything better again. And so there does need to be that sense of purpose and intention and thoughtfulness and sensitivity into how you reintroduce these newly freed hostages, and particularly the children, into back into their homes.
Yeah, and so many of them from this group are from Kibbutz Be'eri. They don't even, those homes that they had, they don't even exist, certainly not in the way that they did before. Clarissa Ward, we are watching hostages arrive at the Sheba Medical Center. We'll continue to check back in with you, and we'll continue our special live coverage of the second group of hostages have now been released by Hamas. They are back in Israel. The second group of Palestinian prisoners have now returned to the West Bank. We are tracking every single angle of this story. We'll be back after a quick break.
All the families should be united and all the hostages will be freed today. We cannot wait any longer. So I'm glad to see families. I always, like in the last month, I get to know so many of the families of the hostages, and now a friend of mine that his grandmother Yafa Adar was kidnapped. She's free now, and I'm so happy for him and for her and for all of their family. It's really, it's only there are not a lot of moments when we can smile, and to see her back with her grandson, it's something special. And I want to have the same with him, but I want every family to have the same. So we are glad for every hostage that was got freed, but we are expecting to see everyone freed. We want that our government to do everything to continue the deal, and we hope that the efforts of the US and the international community will make it work, that we will see the deal goes on and on and on till everyone will be freed in any price. That's what must happen now, that the deal will continue and we will see more and more families will return to their loved one. There is any questions or more things should be talked about?
Let's first of all, thank you very much, Noam. The questions will be afterwards. You really can't get used to those stories, and thank you very much for sharing this with us. Before we move on to Moran, I would like to ask everyone who's participating in this conversation to please turn on your cameras. We would like to see your faces. It's important to us. Please turn them on. Doesn't matter if you're in your car or what situation you're at. Okay, turn it on. We want to see your faces. Thank you. We appreciate it, and we appreciate you being here very much. So the next, thank you again, Noam. The next person to speak would be Moran Tayal, whose nephew Yegev and his wife Rimon were abducted from Nirim, Kibbutz Nirim. Please, Moran, go ahead.
First, thank you for giving us this platform to tell our beloved one story. It's very important to us that it will never become numbers and will never stay as names and numbers, but that each one of you and all the civilians of the world, the citizens of the world, will know the stories and the personalities behind the numbers and behind the names. They are actually or literally buried alive in some tunnel out there in Gaza. Nobody's seen them, nobody knows them, nobody know anything. While we hopefully not, but you know, on that Saturday, on October 7th, it was literally the terrorists enter and they literally act as, you know, crime against humanity. They went, in our stories, they went into Kibbutz Nirim, where Yegev and Rimon are living as a young couple, 2 years of marriage, with their dogs, with their cats. Two young people that all their ambition in this world is to bring peace, to bring the...
They've been taking a path from Gaza out into Egypt through several checkpoints. Here to talk us through the logistics is CNN military analyst, retired U.S. Air Force Colonel Cedric Leighton. So, Colonel, walk us through their path out of Gaza and how they're eventually making their way home.
So the big thing here, Alex, is that they really had a circuitous route going through these border crossings and then ending up in Tel Aviv. But let's take a quick look at some more detail here, because the first crossing that they had is here at Rafah, which is the crossing from Gaza into Egypt. And then they went from Egypt to the Kerem Shalom crossing, which crosses both from Gaza and into Israel, as well as from Egypt into Israel. They cross through this way, and then there's another crossing down here at Nitzana, where they could also have crossed. And then when you go back to the other map here, the first day's hostages went to the airbase at Hatzarim. That's not the case as far as I know today, but for tonight's release, all of them seem to be ending up at hospitals here in Tel Aviv.
So essentially going like this and then up to the hospitals up there.
That's right.
What's interesting, Colonel, is that there are a number of crossings between Israel and Gaza directly, and those are not being used. These 2 days, they've gone from Gaza into Egypt before going into Israel. So why do you think that is, and do you think that that will continue in these next 2 days at least?
I think it will continue that way, Alex, because first of all, the crossings in the north have all been damaged. So they are crossings that basically are not permissible.
Erez up there.
The Erez is the one up there, exactly right near Sderot. That crossing is completely unusable for these purposes right now, and it's also dangerous for Hamas to go in there. The other reason is that these actually have especially Rafah has the facilities, the border crossing facilities. The Egyptian customs, Israeli officials also end up there. So that was the best way for them to move, and then to go in this way, and then up through the areas as we talked about.
We've been so focused, of course, on the treatment that these hostages may need, but you can imagine Shin Bet and the IDF, so the local security service, domestic security service, they're going to be speaking to these hostages. What are they going to be asking? What do they want to find out about their ordeal?
So one of the key things that they wanted to know is, for example, what did they see? Did they see things like this? Did they see these tunnels? Did they notice where they might have been? Did they have any daylight at all? Were there times when they were outside? For the most part, as far as we know right now, the hostages were held inside tunnels like this one, and they didn't really have any interaction with any other groups. They may have had some interaction with other hostages. That would also be a point of interest. They would want to know what kind of facilities they were so that they can match them up with any maps of tunnels that the Israelis may have to see if there's some points of vulnerability that could be exploited for future operations. And then, of course, the other thing they'll want to know is, did they encounter these kinds of people, which they obviously did. How many of them? When were they there? Were they only with Hamas? Were they with other groups? Those are the kinds of things that they may or may not know, but those are the kinds of questions that they would be asked in a case like this.
Yeah, because the expectation now with these days of pause is that Hamas is going to be trying to round up other hostages who may be in other locations or may be held by other groups, gangs, individuals, families, that kind of thing. Colonel Cedric Leighton, thank you very much. We will have much more on the releases of the 17 hostages that happened today and what is coming in the days ahead. CNN Special Live coverage continues in just a moment. Stay with us. You are live with us in the CNN newsroom. I'm Alex Marquardt in Washington. My colleague Caitlin Collins is live in Tel Aviv. Jim Acosta is off tonight. We do continue our breaking news coverage as Israel welcomes home a second group of hostages released earlier today. This was the extraordinary scene that you see right there at the Rafah crossing from Gaza into Egypt. We witnessed those hostages finally making their way out of Gaza in those vehicles from the International Red Cross. Just moments ago, we also watched as some of those hostages finally arrived at a hospital in Tel Aviv, and it's there where they will be reunited with their families after more than 7 weeks in captivity. We are still waiting for more hostages to arrive at that hospital. That should be moments from now. As part of the deal involving a 4-day pause in the fighting, which we are halfway through, more than 36 Palestinians were also released from Israeli prisons, both yesterday and today. CNN's Caitlin Collins is with me from Tel Aviv. She's been bringing us up-to-the-minute coverage of this ongoing hostage exchange. Caitlin?
Yeah, Alex, and as we are just now seeing, here, 4 o'clock in the morning, those hostages arrive at the Sheba Medical Center right now. We're still learning more about what's going to happen potentially tomorrow with the third group of hostages, because we do now know that Israeli officials have received the list of hostages who are slated to be released by Hamas from Gaza tomorrow. We know the Israeli government has already contacted the families of the hostages that are on that list to give them the news, also contacting the families whose loved ones are not on that list tomorrow and are not set to be released by Hamas. Right now, these are the 13 Israeli hostages who were released today. 8 children and 5 women. They range in age from 67 to just 3 years old. The IDF also says that 4 Thai nationals who were being held hostage were part of the group that was released today. We have eyes and ears on the ground covering all of these breaking developments here in this second hostage exchange as part of this major temporary truce. Our CNN Chief Global Affairs correspondent Matthew Chance has been following this all day. And Matthew, obviously we're watching, still seeing these hostages, so much later than the first group of hostages, make their way to these medical centers. What's next for them?
Yeah, well, so much later, but at least they're here. And there was a point earlier on this evening when there was a possibility they weren't going to be released at all. So it's still, I think, positive. In terms of what's next, well, obviously they're going to be undergoing, much more thorough medical checkups to make sure there's nothing medically wrong with them that can be treated. For instance, they've spent a lot of time potentially in darkness, some of them probably underground. That's certainly a concern. And so one of the first things that the Israeli medics will have done is examine their eyes to make sure there's been no permanent damage to that kind of lack of light. That medical treatment will continue, but if everybody's in a sort of relatively good health, and at least one of them has been sent directly to a hospital with some potential condition, well then they're looking at the psychological counselling. They want to make sure that this first contact back at home is as soft and as easy as possible. There are going to be psychological problems. The Israelis expect. The trauma of being torn away from their homes on October the 7th in such a violent way, and of course their subsequent ordeal as well. This would have left scars.
Yeah, I keep thinking is this agreement, and as delicate as we saw it so clearly was today, Prime Minister Netanyahu said at one point that the Red Cross would be able to go in as a part of this agreement to tend to the other hostages who are not being released, who aren't expected to be in this group of 50. But we haven't seen that happen yet, because Israeli officials have been telling us Hamas isn't letting it happen.
That's right. And when I heard that as being one of the things that had been conceded to by Hamas, you think it's a big thing that Hamas were going to allow an outside organisation like the ICRC, the Red Cross, to come in and inspect the other hostages inside Gaza, where they're being hidden, of course, to make sure that the Israelis don't stage special forces military raids to rescue them. And so, look, I think it was always a little unlikely that they were going to agree to that, or at least allow it to happen once they'd agreed to it. And so, yes, that's a big concern. But there have been allegations of violations now from Hamas. It's one of the reasons of the agreement. It's one of the reasons why this hostage exchange, this hostage release rather, was delayed so long. They're saying that the Israelis did not allow sufficient aid into the Gaza Strip and didn't release the right kind of prisoners, the right level of prisoners from Israeli jails either. And so yes, there is this agreement, but it's a very fragile one, and it's full of lots of conditions that may be being violated, but maybe not to the extent that it's worth calling off the deal.
Yeah.
No one wants to derail this for the sake of a small disagreement.
The one part that does appear to have held is there's been no fighting in Gaza, and part of that was also no drones flying overhead. I mean, Becky Anderson was showing this video of a young 9-year-old boy saying, for the first time, no drones flying over Gaza. It's the quietest it's been, and he couldn't remember how long. What does that cost Israel, though, as far as intelligence, as far as what they can see when it comes to moving around hostages or Hamas regrouping?
Well, I mean, this was one of Israel's big concerns, that the reason they didn't want to stage this pause in the fighting is because they thought it may give Hamas the opportunity to regroup, to resupply, using the hostage deal as cover for that. I mean, yes, they're not flying drones in the air either, but they've still got ways, I think, from satellites and things like that to keep an eye on what's going on the ground. Also, the other boon from the hostage releases is that those individual hostages who are coming out may well have intelligence that could be actionable. They may well be able to paint a sort of a bit more three-dimensional picture of what the situation is for the other hostages on the ground. And I don't know this for a fact, but you can imagine, can't you, that each one of those hostages is going to be debriefed by the security services in this country to see what they can pass on, to see what intelligence they can offer.
All right, Matthew Chance, thank you for that reporting. We'll continue to watch this, as we do now know that there is this third list, Alex, of what Israeli hostages. Of course, a big question is whether or not U.S. American citizens are going to be on that list. We didn't see them in the first group. We did not see them in the second group. The White House is hopeful they'll be in this third or potentially fourth group to be released by Hamas.
And we will certainly be asking the White House whether they have gotten that list from the Israelis or from the Qataris, and certainly whether they know any Americans to be on that list or not. Thank you very much, Caitlin. President Joe Biden and his top aides have been closely following today's events unfold. CNN's Arlette Saenz has been with the president for the past few days as he spends time in Nantucket with his family for Thanksgiving weekend. Arlette, we have heard the president repeatedly say how involved with this process he has been. He has made clear that he has personally inserted himself into these conversations, notably with his Israeli, Egyptian, Qatari counterparts. He called the Emir of Qatar again today. There have been repeated calls between the two men, and that call happened as this delay was beginning to form, as we started to understand what was going on. What role did the president play in making the parties move forward and get to where they are now with this hostage release?
Well, Alex, President Biden has talked throughout this entire process that the implementation of this plan will be key. And that is why he got personally involved today, as there were these signs that the deal could be delayed or potentially falling apart. And the officials at the White House say that President Biden spent part of the morning on the phone speaking with the Emir of Qatar and also the Qatari Prime Minister to talk about these possible hurdles that were popping up, as well as ways that they could try to alleviate some of those concerns. Of course, the Qataris have been acting as one of the main mediators between Israel and Hamas in these negotiations. And it was around 1:30 in the afternoon here Eastern time where the White House got word from the Qataris after there had been this extensive engagement with senior White House officials as well as their counterparts in both Egypt, Israel, and Qatar. Around 1:30 is when the White House got word that the release today was moving forward and that the Red Cross was moving to try to recover these hostages. And Vice President Kamala Harris actually spoke a bit about this earlier today as she was out in California. Take a listen to what she had to say.
There were some issues and challenges around implementation. President Biden spoke with the Emir to resolve those issues, and we do believe they are being resolved. We're going to continue to be diligent and vigilant in doing all that we can in that regard to ensure that there is humanitarian aid going in, that hostages are going out, and our highest priority, of course, are the American citizens who are being held.
So President Biden is hoping to keep this deal on track towards completion. But one concern is about those American citizens who are still being held hostage by Hamas. They were not part of the releases that occurred on Friday and Saturday. So officials will be watching for the coming hours, waiting to hear whether any American citizens will be in this next batch expected to be released on Sunday. There are 3 Americans that the U.S. is working to try to get back to their families. That includes 2 women and also that 4-year-old Abigail Adan. The White House saying that they are hopeful that they will be released in the coming days. And of course, there are still many more Americans who remain hostage, as well as that larger group.
Yeah, it's believed there are as many as 10 of them. And when the president was asked if he knows their condition, he said he did not. So that is a major question. Arlette Saenz traveling with the president in Nantucket. Thanks very much. Hamas released 17 hostages tonight, 13 Israelis and 4 Thai nationals. But there are still many families hoping that their relatives will be next to be released. The father and mother of one hostage joins CNN next. Stay with us.
And I believe in humanity. So this is, for me, not enough. Even if they are doing whatever they can, at least what they say, this is not enough, because yesterday they were in Gaza, but they haven't seen the other hostages because somebody is not allowing. But the somebody, when somebody else, from another country, talked with them about Thai people, which I'm extremely happy for them. They are amazing people, those employees. And I'm very happy for them, of course, and their family. But see, suddenly there is a possibility to release. So I'm not talking about releasing. Of course, I'm not expecting Iran to interfere for us, to be involved for us. But I do expect all the powerful country in the world to say to the Red Cross, if you are not going there, we are not supporting you anymore. This is my expectation. And I'm only talking on behalf of myself, I have to say. I'm not talking on behalf of the country or anybody else except of my own opinion. Okay, so I hope it answering your question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Moran.
Thank you, Inga. Thank you, Moran. If anyone else has questions, this is your time to raise your hand. Otherwise, we will conclude this conversation. And again, I would like to...
So far, a total of 26 Israeli hostages have been released by Hamas. The whereabouts, though, of roughly 200 more still unknown in Gaza tonight. For so many families, the wait here is excruciating, and that includes the parents of Sagi Dekel-Hen. You see his photo here. He's 35 years old. He was kidnapped during that raid of kibbutz Nir Oz, where we saw so many of hostages yesterday from that kibbutz. Joining us now tonight, his parents, Jonathan Dekel-Hen and Gillian Kay. Thank you both so much for joining me in what just must be an agonizing time to see other family members coming home while still waiting on word of your loved one. Jonathan, can you just tell me, how you're feeling, how you process this to see what obviously must be a very bittersweet moment for you?
Well, honestly, it's joyous. It's joyous. Yesterday, 12 of the 13 hostages that were released were kids and young moms and elderly ladies, all from my kibbutz. These are my extended family, really, not blood relations, because of the fact that we're a small, very tight community. And today, with the release of more hostages, sort of the same profile, different community, I couldn't be happier for them, honestly. I don't know if this is the start of something bigger and longer, but for right now, I couldn't be happier for those families. But we won't stop until all 240 are home and safe with their families, including, of course, Sagi.
And Gillian, I mean, when you hear that, that is so amazing to hear that selflessness and that, and to know, because it's such a tight-knit community. And of course, Nir Oz, we were talking to Adina Moshe's family earlier. They were talking about just the fact that she was held underground, they said, this entire time in the dark. And she had this moment, I was told, where she came out, and when she saw the sun for the first time as she was on her way to being released, she didn't even know if she was being released or if she was taken to be executed until she saw those Red Cross cars. I mean, it just speaks to what all of these hostages have been through for the last 50 days.
That's really heart-wrenching what you just shared. Adina is a very dear friend, and that I hadn't heard that. I'm a little speechless. But of course, every day, terrible things go through your mind. And just to clarify, I do want to say I am Sigi's stepmom, and I'm here in the States watching it from here, which is sort of a different kind of agony. Not being with Jonathan, not being with the other kids, not being with the community there in Israel right now. And, of course, every day it's a new sort of horrible thought interspersed with hope. Is he okay? Is he being treated all right? Is he hurt? And then, of course, hoping that he is okay and that we're going to get him back, like all the rest of the hostages.
Jonathan, have you heard anything from, I know that you talked about how the U.S. government had done a really good job of staying in touch with y'all, with the families. Have you heard anything from either the Israeli government or the U.S. government?
No, unfortunately, we are in an especially challenging boat with many others, not just from Nir Oz, but from other communities. From the morning of October 7th, 9:30 to be exact in the morning, that was the last time we heard from Sagi, and we have heard nothing else. He did not turn up or he was not identified in any of the horrific video clips that Hamas posted on their social media sites, and we've had no more information from any source, Israeli, American, or otherwise.
Yeah, I know it's difficult, and there's not a lot of news. I mean, this deal is for women and children, and we've spoken to a lot of families who they have young sons like Sagi, and they're just, it's hard to kind of wrap their heads around, what the prospects are here. And I also know, Gillian, Sagi has 2 young children. He has a third that is due to be born any day now. How's his family doing?
Yeah. how's his family doing? His girls miss him. His wife misses him, but they're strong. They're doing their best to keep themselves together. Certainly his wife to take care of the girls, and they're waiting, like we all are, hoping, waiting for him to come back and for life to go on in whatever way it will. What more could I say about how they are?
Well, I would only add to that. It's heartbreaking when they ask questions that we cannot answer, his girls. And it's also heartbreaking in a similar way. They ask, why can't they go home? When can they go home? And it's impossible to tell them that Kibbutz Nir Oz was destroyed. It was burnt to the ground. And that not only can they not get their dad back right away, but also there's the home that they've known their entire lives was destroyed by terrorists and looters a month and a half ago. So it's been agonizing to stand there in front of our children and other children and have no good answers to any of their totally legitimate questions.
I wouldn't even know his grandparents where to start with those questions. When is his wife due to have his third child?
Maybe 2 weeks.
Yeah, a week to 2 weeks.
A week to 2 weeks. And she's been early.
Yeah, of course. A week to 2 weeks. That could be any day now. We all know. I remember my sister had my nephews that were a month early. I mean, how are you guys holding on? I think we hear from a lot of viewers and people who are watching who listen to interviews like this one, and they just don't even know, how you guys have the strength to talk about this, to talk about your pain, and what is this agonizing situation that you're in.
Well,
I'll let you start with that.
Look, I'd rather be doing anything else in the world right now. But my son and 230 other Israelis are being held captive in a living hell. And it's my job and other people's jobs to, despite the pain, alongside the pain and the fear, to do everything that we can to make sure that the world, through media like you and governments in Israel and the states and partnering countries, good-willed countries, to keep this really prioritized. And I keep going because I visualize a day, I hope tomorrow, but I don't know when that day is going to be, when his two little girls leap into his arms, because that's what they're waiting for. It's what we're all waiting for, and for him to meet his third little girl very, very soon.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way to fight this. As you said, it's so impossible to wrap your head around. So the only thing we can do is continue to lift up the story of the hostages, keep his name and the other hostages' names front, center in everyone's minds, to fight and struggle for that, to bring them all home. If we stop doing that, then there's just collapse, and it's not going to do Sagi any good.
Yeah, I'm so grateful to y'all for joining. Thank you for coming on and being willing to talk about this. The stories are so important. Jonathan Dekelhan, Gillian Kay, your son Sagi Dekelhan, we are thinking of you guys and his whole family tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both. Of course, we are continuing to speak to families like Sagi's who are just spending tonight waiting to learn more. Also, as those other hostages, the second group that was released today, they've just arrived at hospitals here in Tel Aviv. We're continuing to track that as they are being reunited with their families. Our special live coverage of the latest hostage release continues right after a short break.
Understand that I believe it when I see it. So every person, only when they get back, we can say for sure that they're back. It's very difficult, but we have to be like that.
What is the message for the Israeli government at this time, as I know there's been a lot of criticism in terms of the response and being able to get people back fast enough. There have been calls for ceasefire. Currently, Israel and Hamas are in the middle of this 4-day ceasefire in day 2 of that. Do you hope it will go longer? What is your hopes for what happens next?
My hopes are the same for Israel and the rest of the Western world. It is to have the priorities straight, that it's about values over politics, and it's about people over countries. And this is my request and my demand, that we will choose a future that actually works for life and not for circles of death. And I think in that respect, it is very clear that the Israeli government and everyone else should prioritize bringing back the hostages above anything else.
You're a mother as well. You've been watching everything that's been happening. As a mother and as an Israeli woman watching this now from afar, as you have a friend that's been taken hostage, and I'm sure I've heard so many stories, especially for those people in Israel who have simply said every Israeli is somehow impacted by those attacks on October the 7th. How are you taking this, and what has been your response in the wake of this? And is this example of the stories now being shared by the grassroots group of women that have joined you? Is that part of it?
Yes. When I was speaking in the European Parliament and in Dam Square, and after that everywhere else, I'm saying honestly that I'm hysterical, and I think we should all be, because it's frightening. And the mothers, thousands of mothers that contacted me and wrote me that this is the only speech that they can connect to, really brought me to a place that I feel I need to give the stage for them. And the Mom Too campaign, which everyone is welcome to follow, which is now a movement, takes this mother's tribe and give it a place to find a crack, to see a future in this very difficult situation for all sides, because we must do that. No one is now thinking about after tomorrow. And this is what, as a pregnant woman and as already a mother, I feel like I have to do, because I owe it to my grandmother that in 1933 was here in Europe, and after that in Auschwitz, and this is what we have to do in order not to find not ourselves and not anyone else in a future that has no horizon.
We have some incredibly emotional moments that have just come into CNN. I want to show you this new piece of video. This is the moment that Emily Hand, you can see her right there, was reunited with her father, Thomas Hand. That was just moments ago. Another family right there reuniting as well. Emily is 9 years old. She turned 9 while in captivity, released today after 50 days held by Hamas. Thomas Hand, you may remember, was interviewed by CNN, Caitlin, several weeks ago by our friend and colleague Clarissa Ward, and it was one of the most searing interviews that I've ever seen in my life, where he was saying that he not only believed that Emily had been killed, but that he had said that would be a better outcome than being taken prisoner by Hamas because of what he thought Hamas might do to his daughter. He then later found out that she was still alive, and here we have this remarkable, unbelievably emotional reunion.
My message is quite clear. I think if someone
just to see
in the parliament
that
members
moment
confused somehow
where
that this methodologies
that father
were
gets
used
to
in
hug his
October
daughter
7th are legitimate,
after hearing,
because any
how
kind
candid
of
he was
context,
with Clarissa in that interview about
they need to talk to their mother.
what he thought
They
had
need
happened to
go
her.
to find
It gives
the
you chills. I mean, you see the smiles
internal
on the
compass
faces of the IDF soldiers
what
who are
should
there
be allowed in
as he
this
is being
world.
reunited with her. We've seen so
Because
many
that
of these
is a risk
moments,
to
and each one
everyone.
I think gives
And
you
the
chills, but
hostages
also
for
just to
me
see
are
this,
a
to know their
symbol
story,
of that.
And the other
So
little
that is
girl
one
that
thing,
you see
and this is
in this
also my
video
request
hugging the
and
other man,
demand,
that is
and
Hila
apply for them.
Rotem. She's hugging her uncle Yair, I
And
believe.
about,
He's
oh,
done several
sorry, can you
interviews
remind me
talking
the
about her.
other side of your
She
question?
was the hostage who was
course,
released
in
today in an
terms
unusual
of,
circumstance,
you
one
know,
that we
you
have
had
not
said
seen
that
play out
there
in the last
really
2 days, Alex, which
is
is
no thought right
without
now
her
of the
mother.
future of what's
Typically,
next
what
for
we have
Israel.
seen and what we heard from Israeli
Rather,
officials is that
it's
when they
a
made this
focus on
agreement
the
with
present
Hamas,
and why
that
that
if
is.
there were parents and their children,
Yeah.
mothers and their children
It's
who
a
were held
survival
together,
mode,
they wanted them to be
right? So
released
it's a
together,
fight or
not to
flight
be
mode.
separated. And we've seen
we
multiple
need to
mothers and their children be
to
released.
just
We saw it
take care of
yesterday. We saw
ourselves now.
several of them today.
I'm not a
Hila
politician,
was the one who was
and
released without
I
her
don't know
mother. And
strategies,
we've asked Israeli officials.
and also
They
I
don't
don't
really
think this is
know
what I'm needed
what
for.
is the condition of
We
her
do
mom.
need
They
women
do believe
in
she
these
was kidnapped.
positions.
There's video of her
But
being kidnapped while
we
her daughter
also
hid in the
need
bushes on
people
October
to
7th.
think about
But they
future,
clearly, I think it speaks
because
to
we
they
have
really
to
don't know the
have
conditions of any of these
someone to
hostages
look
until they
forward
turn
to
up at the
and
border.
to
There's no
work
insight
on
into
our
how they're
lives
doing. And so
too.
to see her
Otherwise, we
and obviously
survive
Hila
without
and
any
Emily
cause,
are
without
friends.
any
Emily
meaning.
was at that kibbutz.
And
She
everyone
was
all
spending the
over
night.
world
She was at a
that I meet
sleepover
now
with her friend. She
are-
was, not actually, she didn't live there. And she was at a sleepover on October 7th when that horrific day happened. And so just a joyous moment and when there's not been a lot of those moments, and to see them reunite with their family, you can just see it on their faces, Alex.
Yeah, and it's not just for those families, it's for the whole country. I mean, they've been demanding the hostages come home, that Israel do what they can to bring these hostages home. Obviously, there are many other families that are holding out hope that their family members are still alive and will be home soon. And under this deal that was struck, there's an expectation that 24 more Israelis will be released over the coming 2 days. But as you say, Caitlin, things can change and unexpected things can happen, and people may not get released when they are expected to. And so it is a very fluid situation, a very worrying situation. But the one we're looking at right now is obviously one of tremendous joy for those two families. Caitlin and I are going to take a quick break. We will have more of our special coverage from Israel and Washington about the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas right after this break. Stay with us. As the second wave of Israeli hostages and Palestinian prisoners were released today, Qatar, a central figure in the negotiations between Israel and Hamas, is hoping now that the truce can be extended beyond the 4 days that was originally agreed to, as hostages arrived, as you can see there, at Israeli hospitals. Palestinian detainees and prisoners also arrived in the West Bank, where celebrations erupted. The Israeli military did use tear gas to disperse some of the crowds. I want to bring in Andrew Hallman, who is the Vice President of National Security Strategy and Integration at Peraton, and joins us now. He also served in the Office of the Director of National Intelligence as one of this country's highest intelligence figures. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. We know that during this pause, 6 hours a day, there will be no drones in the sky, not Israeli drones, not American drones. How does Israel make up for those eyes not being there to try to keep tabs on Hamas, to try to figure out where these hostages are?
Alex, this was a major concession made by Israel and the United States to restrict drone flights. They've been an important tactical asset in the ability to locate and track Hamas operatives. So to make up for that loss of capability, Israel has other capabilities, satellite reconnaissance capabilities. They tend to be better for strategic intelligence collection, but for tactical intelligence collection, it really puts a premium on human intelligence collection, spies, on personal accounts, for example, of released hostages, of social media accounts, of other open source reporting, as well as other potential standoff capabilities Israel has. But it's an important collection capability that they will be without for several hours a day.
The concern now during this pause is that Hamas will be able to reset, move around, perhaps rearm and prepare for the next wave of fighting. What does Israel do right now to capitalize on this from an intelligence standpoint?
It's an important opportunity for Israel because with the movement of Hamas, with the ability of Hamas to then get about to try to reconstitute, resupply, regroup, reconstitute its command and control, that offers movement possibilities that are opportunities for intelligence collection. As well, it's a probable attempt to then move other hostages around in an effort to preserve their viability as future negotiating bargaining chips, for example, to extend the truce longer. These are all movements that offer opportunities for intelligence collections, as well as the potential that Hamas would try to recontact and be in contact with its Iranian sponsors, with the IRGC. Those also offer opportunities for intelligence collection, not just against Hamas, but against Iran, to round out the picture.
I mean, there have been questions, really, about to what extent Iran was involved in the October 7th attacks. What kind of contact do you think there is currently between Iran and Hamas, given how much scrutiny there is on Hamas?
I suspect there's still contact. I do believe that Iran will provide guidance to Hamas as Hamas tries to reconstitute, to regroup and resupply. But again, that offers an opportunity for intelligence collection. There's other opportunities that Israel has. For example, sensitive site exploitation, as the IDF has cleared the north, as it has captured Hamas operatives, an opportunity to interview them, to debrief them, to interrogate them, and then try to turn that around fast with a rapid turnaround cycle to get actionable intelligence for future location and tracking of Hamas operatives. But the truce, the longer that goes on, the harder that is for Israel to do that, because that intelligence becomes stale the longer that truce goes on.
I want to ask you about the role of Bill Burns, the director of the CIA. He's really been central to this. He's gone to the region. We know he's been on numerous phone calls. What does that tell us? Why do you think that the CIA does have that role, and Burns in particular?
There's two primary reasons, Alex. One is simply the personal stature that Bill Burns brings to these situations, the credibility and standing that he has as a professional diplomat without parallel, which gives him a lot of trust and credibility around the world. Secondly, intelligence channels have proven to be a effective means of negotiation because they tend to offer enduring, lasting, trusted channels that tend to be more resilient to shifting political winds, and so they provide a trusted channel for some time. George Tenet did this, for example, in the Clinton administration as an interlocutor between the Palestinians and the Israelis.
This has been cast, including by the Biden administration, as an intelligence failure by Israel. The U.S. has left a lot of this up to Israel in terms of keeping tabs on Hamas and other Palestinian groups. After this, do you think the U.S. intelligence community is going to make more of an effort so they can have their own intelligence?
I do think they'll come under pressure both from within the administration as well as from Congress to have more of its independent intelligence streams. But I think there will also be an emphasis on helping the Israelis learn from this conflict, help retrain them, offer assistance to them to restore their intelligence capability to the point that they don't suffer the same kind of catastrophic intelligence failure. But it'll also be important for the U.S. to be keeping its eye on its long-term, more strategic threat from China. And so while it can walk and chew gum at the same time, it will have to be cognizant of the need to maintain its intelligence collection and capabilities against, for example, the Russians with the Ukraine-Russia conflict. And at the same time, the prospect of a broader Middle East conflict, it has to be cautious that it doesn't get dragged into too many places at once.
All right, Andrew Hellman, have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time and expertise. Really
Thank you,
appreciate
Alex.
it. And we will be right back with more special live coverage. Stay with us.
From around the world have been seeing some very horrific images. And I think one of the concepts that we've been talking about when it comes to terrorist groups is that this is more of an ideology. And so to fight a terrorist organization, you're not necessarily fighting a country, but an idea. How are people affected when they see all of this violence, the way that it's portrayed, and really such polar opposites when we get to this big issue?
That's a wonderful question, because PTSD is, it occurs, it happens with the individual who's experiencing the trauma, but is also happening to all the individuals who are secondhand experiencing the trauma and who can very indirectly or directly are experiencing it, like the family members who we've just been hearing from. And so worldwide, exposure to these images of violence and images of what's happening, this can definitely be very, very anxiety creating for a lot of people. Individuals who already have anxiety disorders or who have something that may not be diagnosed, but something that they've always lived with, can definitely be traumatized indirectly just by watching these images, picturing themselves in similar situations. It definitely takes an emotional and psychological toll on everyone.
I'm glad that you mentioned this concept of anxiety. I feel like in recent years, we've been hearing more and more about this sort of diagnosis, and a lot of people do suffer from anxiety. When processing and digesting everything that we are broadcasting out there to the world, all of this stuff that you're seeing, what would be your advice to the everyday person?
Take it slow. You don't have to. You don't have to constantly need that stream in, because that can create a lot of anxiety for you. If you find that you are reaching your capacity with how much you can absorb, and signs that you've reached your capacity might be things like difficulty concentrating, difficulty sleeping after hearing the news, difficulty thinking about anything other than what's going on, physical complaints like stomach aches, and nausea, and muscle tension. If you find you're experiencing this, then take a break. Take a break from the news. We all just have a capacity for anxiety creating information, anxiety creating events. And when we hit that capacity, it can be very damaging to us psychologically to continue to put ourselves in that position where we're getting more and more input.
We've had a few medical experts come on in the past couple of days because this is a very big topic when we think about going forward, processing all of these events, especially for hostages. Is there any way that it could be comparable to maybe something that other people have experienced? For example, being a hostage is not that common when we see it, but people do go to war. We do have Army veterans. Would it be comparable what the hostages are going through now to maybe PTSD from when an Army veteran comes back home, that sort of thing?
Absolutely, absolutely. It is very comparable. Our body, it knows stress, it knows anxiety, it knows life-threatening situations. Our body doesn't necessarily distinguish between if that life-threatening situation's wartime battlefield, if that life-threatening situation is a hostage situation.
Earlier, I spoke with the spokesman for the Qatari Foreign Ministry, who told me that there is a chance that the 4-day pause that has been negotiated could be extended. But for a moment, he told me, it did look like today's deal might fall through. I asked Dr. Majed Al-Ansari what happened today and what slowed down the transfer of hostages.
As you know, Alex, I can't get into the details of the ongoing mediation as it is happening right now. Our main focus here is to get the hostages and the prisoners back home and reunited with their families. And as you might understand, there's a lot of tension within the process itself that we don't want to exacerbate even further. However, what I can tell you is that within this kind of mediation, you're always going to find both sides saying that the other side did not abide by the agreement, and this is why we had the operations room. You know, we are able to get points across in real time to immediately hash out these issues, and this is how we were able today to move from a very bleak moment where it seemed like the agreement is not going to be delivered on this day to now the families on their way to be reunited with their families.
Yeah, a very bleak moment, you say. Our understanding of this agreement that was put into place is that parents and children need to be released together. We've now seen several sets of family members released today and yesterday. Was that one of the issues today?
Again, I can't get into the details of what are the issues that you're talking about, but we are very happy to see, these family members, especially the children, being reunited with their families. And on the other side, we had 39 Palestinians and 13 Israelis today, alongside the 4 Thai nationals. So generally speaking, I think we are progressing in a positive way. This is the second day of the truce, and being able to deliver now the first and second day makes us hopeful that we can work towards a more sustainable agreement and to get more hostages out.
I understand you don't want to get into a tit for tat, he said, she said, between the two sides. But one of the big demands by Hamas was that more aid be allowed into the Gaza Strip. You said in your press conference the other day that it was going to be 200 trucks of aid per day. Is the amount of aid that was agreed upon making its way into Gaza?
As Alex, as you were saying with the reports that we are all have been getting here about the numbers of trucks getting in, they are certainly below, well, they will always be below what is needed, as the need in Gaza is so great and the level of destruction is quite high. However, the agreed amounts need to be there, and it's something that we are working with our partners in Egypt, in the United States, and both parties of the conflict to make sure that logistically things are ready on the ground. There are a lot of moving parts on the ground when it comes to the humanitarian aid there, which we need to work through. Our operations room here in Doha has been working 24/7 since the humanitarian pause began to make sure that all of the elements come together. The freeing of hostages, the freeing of prisoners from Israeli prisons, the aid coming in from Egypt, all of it's happening in the same time. And at the same time, we're maintaining and monitoring the pause itself.
And on the question of Palestinian prisoners being released, the spokesman, Dr. Al-Ansari, said that the Palestinian prisoner releases are based in part on time served and for those at risk. CNN special live coverage continues next.
back. So while there are still some glimmers of hope, today in Israel, they're recognizing it as 50 days in hell. Many of the hostage families are coming to Tel Aviv Square at 7 p.m. To voice what's going on and to raise awareness, because there are hostages from over 30 different...
Leading up to the 2 days of hostage releases that we have been watching and covering here closely, CNN's Nick Robertson has covered the aftermath of the Hamas terror attack and Israel's military response in Gaza, on pause for now as this temporary truce takes hold. He looks back at everything that he's seen, what he's heard, and what may be next. I want to advise you that this report from Nick contains graphic images, but says he's never seen anything like this in his 30 years of war reporting.
Minutes after leaving the plane in Tel Aviv, the sirens have gone off. People are taking cover. We got off the bus, people are taking cover, and you can hear the intercept missiles banging in the air. It's October 7th. 14 hours since Hamas's attack began. No one knew what to expect. A few hours later, 3.5 miles from Gaza, there's Iron Dome being fired up all around us right now. It's illuminating the sky here. The bangs of the Iron Dome intercepting with rockets that are being fired from Gaza just a couple of miles away. The coming days reveal Hamas's horrors. More than 1,200 dead. Here, look at all these shell casings that are scattered around on the ground here. This gives you an indication of the intensity of the firefight. More than 300 at the Nova Music Festival. A rocket shelter there, where some were mercilessly killed in cold blood, had the biggest impact. 6 weeks later, we happened to be passing as Israel's recovery specialists clean it out. This is bringing back a lot of painful and difficult memories. The last time I was here 6 weeks ago, it was still full of human flesh and remains. And I'm looking inside, and it seems, I don't know, shot up, burnt or blown apart, nothing untouched by the war. Destruction on a scale I've never encountered before. More rockets coming out, more rockets coming out. Guys, more rockets coming out. For weeks, from a balcony a mile from Gaza, witnessing the destruction, explosion by explosion, day after day, as the IDF followed political orders to destroy Hamas. Rockets, guys! Rockets! And Hamas emerging to fire rockets back. Through these long weeks, talking with families of hostages, hearing their pain.
It's excruciating. We don't know if he's healthy or wounded. We know nothing.
And sharing difficult moments.
It's not going to be easy.
Guys, siren! With victims returning to where Hamas attacked them.
They were lined up, and I saw one of my friends, she was begging for her life.
So, what next? Ceasefire, hostage release, maybe. but it won't be all hostages, and the hold in fighting is unlikely to last. Israel fears Hamas will exploit the pause to regroup. Hamas will do whatever it takes to survive, including not handing over all the hostages. Israel vows to completely destroy Hamas and release the hostages. A tactics show fighting Hamas is the priority and is far from finished. The implication, judged watching the past 6 weeks. For some hostage families, more days and more weeks of agonizing wait. For Gaza's besieged civilians, continuing misery. Gaza is still cut off from the world. The vast majority of its 2.2 million citizens displaced, crowded in the southern end of the enclave. Humanitarian access on a scale to match the scope of their need is absent. Israel vows to rout Hamas there too. Most of Gaza's hospitals are out of action. International pressure on Israel is mounting.
We are witnessing a killing of civilians that is unparalleled and unprecedented in any conflict since I am Secretary General.
The only concrete certainties today in Gaza, rebuilding what is destroyed will take years. And in Israel, that no one will feel safe until Hamas is gone. Nick Robertson, CNN, Sderot, Israel.
And our thanks to Nick Robertson for that report. Of course, stay with CNN for the very latest here on the ground in Israel on what's happening in Gaza. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm Caitlin Collins in Tel Aviv.
And I'm Alex Marquardt here in Washington. Have a good night.
Over the last decade, Kenya has been on the front line of the climate crisis. The East African country has battled everything from severe drought to devastating floods. But 3 young female activists are finding creative solutions to spread awareness and address the effects of the climate crisis in their home country. From inventing an eco
You all set? All right. Yesterday, families all across America gathered together with their loved ones and to give thanks. We have much to be thankful for in America. The food on our tables, the family and loved ones in our homes, and the many blessings that come from living in the greatest nation on earth. And today, we can also be thankful of families being recruited and reunited with loved ones who have been held hostage for nearly 50 days. Beginning this morning, under a deal reached by extensive U.S. diplomacy, including numerous calls I've made from the Oval Office to leaders across the region, fighting in Gaza will halt for 4 days. This deal also is structured to allow a pause to continue for more than 50 hostages to be released. That's our goal. This morning, I've been engaged with my team as we began the first difficult days of implementing this deal. It's only a start, but so far it's gone well. Earlier this morning, 13 Israeli hostages were released, including an elderly woman, a grandmother, and mothers with their young children, some under the age of 6 years old. Separately, several Thai nationals and Filipino nationals were also kidnapped by Hamas on the 7th. They were released as well. All of these hostages have been through a terrible ordeal, and this is the beginning of a long journey of healing for them. The teddy bears waiting to greet those children at the hospital are a stark reminder of the trauma these children have been through, and at such a very young age. Jill and I, Jill's with me here, keeping them all in our prayers today. Today has been a product of a lot of hard work and weeks of personal engagement. From the moment Hamas kidnapped these people, I, along with my team, have worked around the clock to secure their release. We saw the first results of this effort with the release of 2 American hostages in late October, followed by the release of 2 Israeli hostages. I've consistently pressed for a pause in the fighting for 2 reasons: to accelerate and expand humanitarian assistance going into Gaza, and 2, to facilitate the release of hostages. And over the past several weeks, I've spoken repeatedly with the Emir of Qatar, the President Sisi of Egypt, and Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel to help secure this deal, to nail it down. And I want to thank all 3 leaders for their personal partnership to get this done. I spoke with the Emir and President el-Sisi and the Prime Minister Netanyahu again on Wednesday to confirm the elements of the engagement. As I said, today's release are the start of a process. We expect more hostages to be released tomorrow, and more the day after, and more the day after that. Over the next few days, we expect that dozens of hostages will be returned to their families. We also remember all those who are still being held and renew our commitment to work for their release as well. 2 American women and 1 4-year-old child, Abigail, who remains among those missing. We also will not stop until we get these hostages brought home and an answer to their whereabouts. I remain in personal contact with the leaders of Qatar, Egypt, and Israel to make sure this stays on track and every aspect of the deal is implemented. You know, this extended pause in the fighting brings a critical opportunity to deliver much-needed food, medicine, water, and fuel to the civilians in Gaza, and we are not wasting 1 single minute. Since my trip to Israel last month, I've been focused on accelerating the delivery of humanitarian assistance to Gaza in coordination with the United Nations and the Red Cross. I just spoke with my special envoy for the Middle East humanitarian issues, David Satterfield, for an update. And I've asked him to monitor our progress hour by hour and keep me personally informed. From the beginning, we put in place mechanisms to prevent Hamas from diverting these supplies. And we're continuing that effort to make sure aid gets to the people who need it. More than 200 trucks arrived at the crossing point in Egypt into Gaza today. These trucks carry food and medicine, as well as fuel and cooking gas. The fuel will be used not only to power the trucks delivering this life-saving supplies, but for desalinization, for water wells, for hospitals, and for bakeries. And hundreds more trucks are getting in position as well, ready to enter Gaza over the coming days to support the innocent Palestinians who are suffering greatly because of this war that Hamas has unleashed. Hamas doesn't give a damn about them. We also look to the future. As we look to the future, we have to end this cycle of violence in the Middle East. We need to renew our resolve to pursue this 2-state solution where Israelis and Palestinians can one day live side by side in a 2-state solution with equal measure of freedom and dignity. 2 states for 2 peoples. And it's more important now than ever. Hamas unleashed this terrorist attack because they fear nothing more than Israelis and Palestinians living side by side in peace. You know, to continue down the path of terror and violence and killing and war is to give Hamas what they seek, and we can't do that. So today, let's continue to be thankful for all the families who are now and those who will soon be brought together again. And I want to once again thank the Emir of Qatar, President Sisi of Egypt, and Prime Minister Netanyahu for their partnership to make what we've done so far possible, and for their continued leadership as we all keep working to implement this deal. And over the coming days, I'll remain engaged with leaders throughout the Middle East as we all work together to build a better future for the region, a future where this kind of violence is unthinkable, a future where all children in the region, every child, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, Israeli, Palestinian, Arab, grow up knowing only peace. That's what we do. We're waiting now. It's just a matter of, I thought maybe even as soon as by the time I got here. But in the next hour or so, we'll know what the second wave of releases are. And I'm hopeful that it's as we anticipate. So thank you all for listening. I'll take a few questions.
Mr. President, when will the first American hostages be released since none were included today?
We don't know when that will occur, but we expect it to occur. And we don't know what the list of all the hostages are and when they'll be released, but we know the numbers they're going to be released. So it's my hope and expectation they'll be soon.
And of the 10 Americans that are unaccounted for, do you know all of their conditions? Are they all alive?
We don't know all the conditions.
Mr. President, how long do you expect this war is going to take? And have you encouraged Prime Minister Netanyahu to set a timeline, say, by the end of this year?
I've encouraged the Prime Minister to focus on trying to reduce the number of casualties while he is attempting to eliminate Hamas, which is a legitimate objective he has. That's a difficult task, and I don't know how long it will take. My expectation and hope is that as we move forward, the rest of the Arab world and the region is also putting pressure on all sides to slow this down, to bring this to an end as quickly as we can.
Mr. President,
what are the chances of this troops to be extended by a few days or more?
I think the chances are real.
Mr. President, there are members of your party who would like to see conditions placed on aid to Israel. What is your view on that? They would like to see, a reduction in the bombing and that sort of thing.
Well, I think that's a worthwhile thought, but I don't think if I started off with that, we'd ever gotten to where we are today. We have to take this a piece at a time.
Mr. President, do you trust Hamas to uphold their deal?
I don't trust Hamas to do anything right. I only trust Hamas to respond to pressure.
Mr. President, you said you were hoping to get cooperation from Arab leaders. What are you hearing from them when you talk to them? What would you like to see them do?
I'm hearing a lot, but I'm not going to speak to it right now. There's an overwhelming desire on the part of the region to, let me back up. I cannot prove what I'm about to say, but I believe one of the reasons why Hamas struck when they did was they knew that I was working very closely with the Saudis and others in the region to bring peace to the region by having recognition of Israel and Israel's right to exist. You may recall when we did the G20 about a little while ago, I was able to get a resolution, a statement passed through there saying we're going to build a railroad from Riyadh all the way through the Middle East into Saudi Arabia, Israel, et cetera, and all the way up to Europe. Not the railroad, but it would be an underground pipeline and then railroad. The whole idea is there's overwhelming interest, and I think most Arab nations know it, in coordinating with one another to change the dynamic in their region for a longer-term peace. And that is what I'm going to continue to work on. Thank you all very, very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to you all. I hope you enjoyed it.
You too.
I will give you some background. Our first speaker will be Noam. She's the daughter of Chaim Perry, a peace activist who was abducted from his home in Nir Oz. He's 79 years old. Afterwards, we will have Nadav, the son of Lior Odaev, who is a prominent figure in Kibbutz Nir Yitzchak. And last, we will have Ruby Chen, the father of Itai, who was abducted from Nachal Oz. And yes, please, let's begin with Noam. I will unmute you. Please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm Noam Perry. I'm the daughter of Chaim Perry that was abducted from his home in Kibbutz Nir Oz. Before I even start with my story today, I want to thank you for bringing our stories to the world. And we now know, after we got 13 of our community members back yesterday, we know that the pressure that the international community is putting on Hamas is the reason that we're starting to see our loved ones coming back. So I want to thank you, and I want to ask you to continue and do it until we see all of them coming home. You have a very important role in this issue, and I can't stress enough how during these very emotional days, we thank you for taking this role and conveying our stories to the world and making sure that this pressure continues all the time. So I want to tell you a bit about my father. I was born and raised in Kibbutz Nir Oz. It's a very small, peaceful community near the Gaza Strip. My father, as said, he's a peace activist, a human rights fighter all his life. And he is living there in Nir Oz with my mother. On the morning of October 7th, dozens and dozens, I think more than 100 terrorists has invaded Nir Oz. They have gone house by house and ruined everything, killed many people. I know most of them. It's people I grew up with, my friends, parents of my friends. And they have entered my parents' home several times, shooting everything, ruining everything. It took them 3 times to find the safe room where my parents were hiding. When they were able to break the door, my father pushed the terrorists away, who then went to get some backup. And on those precious minutes, my mother could hide just 1 or 2 meters behind him. I was there in Nir Oz just 4 days ago. I saw the safe room. I saw the place where she hid. It's not even a place to hide. It was dark, and she was so quiet, and she just sat there. And when they came back, they took my father, and she was hiding there. We know that he understood they can't see her, and he walked away with them. My father is almost 80 years old. He's a brave man, like you can understand from the story, but he's not a healthy man. He has survived a heart attack, and he depends on medication to survive. From what we know, we assume he's kept underground, and we know that the conditions there are very hard, specifically for old and ill people. It's hard to breathe there. It's maybe we don't even know if he can stand in the place where he's kept. And I don't need to tell you, it's been 50 days so far. Unfortunately, I think you all know that my father is not alone. 75 people were kidnapped from Nir Oz community. 29 more has been murdered. Altogether, it's 1 out of 4 people from this community either murdered or kidnapped. And I can tell you this morning that we have a sign of life from my father. We know he's alive from other people from the community who were released yesterday. And we feel it brings a lot of hope, and yet together we feel very urgent to let them all out. We don't know how much time they're going to be able to hold on there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Noam. Before Nadav will speak, I am kindly asking all of you who have not opened their cameras, please do so. This is very important to us. We would like to see faces, okay, of all of you, and we appreciate you being here, so thank you very much. Please, Nadav, go ahead.
So, hello everyone. And as Noam said before me, we thank you for taking the time and bringing our stories, and the fact that we have a big struggle ahead of us, even though we got some hope yesterday by the release of 13 people from our communities and 11 more people that are foreign citizens that was being released. The fight has still haven't been over, so we thank you for taking the time and bringing our stories to where they need to be, which is everywhere until the situation is resolved. My father is Lior. He's a 61-year-old man that 2 years ago suffered a massive heart attack. On the morning of the attack of the terrorists that came in from the Gaza Strip, as any rational human being, he decided that he needs to do something. He left my mom at home in the safe room by herself, while my youngest brother was in the party in Kibbutz Re'im. And he tried to contact my brother with no way to know whether he got away or not. My brother is safe and he's with us, and he got away, which is some sort of relief in that term. But since 8:47 in the morning, which was the last contact he had with my mom, we don't know anything besides the fact that we know he was hurt. He was managed to notify us that he was hurt, and he said he loved us. And since that moment, we are very concerned because he has no medicine. He's taking blood thinners as part of the treatment that he's getting after the heart attack he was suffering 2 years ago. My dad is an ambulance driver. He's a volunteer medic for many years. So our hope that he and his people that he's with, because we do have indications from the phone that there was a group that was together. We don't know where they are now. I was very happy to hear from Noam that they do have some sort of a sign that her dad is still alive. Unfortunately, I don't have that privilege. And the fact that we are still here 50 days later, trying to convince and demand the communities in Israel and around the world to come forth and help us, bringing the pressure for everyone to be released is very important, and it cannot go silent until every last one of them is coming back. I think that's it from my end. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Nadav. We will now let Ruby, the father of Itai, speak. Please, Ruby, go ahead.
Yeah, so today is day 50, reminding everybody we changed the digit, reminding you some other facts that there are over still 200 hostages unaccounted for from 30 different nationalities, meaning that this is something that the international community should be focused on, and we thank you for letting us amplify our voice via your channels. My family lives in a city called Netanya, which is like 10 miles north of Tel Aviv. Itai is my middle son, where I have a elder son, age 22, younger son, 13. Those of you that have 3 kids, you know, the sandwich typically has a very specific position in the family to be the connector between the youngest and the oldest. So he is definitely missed within our family. Itai grew up here. We live on next to the beach, so enjoying life, simple life, where Itai spent his adolescent years in the Boy Scouts, where he was a mentor for younger kids and teaching them, you know, how to be a good adult, someone that contributes to the community. He also played professional basketball till the age of 18. So he is a spunky kid, and, you know, the emphasis should be a kid. He's 19. Like, I still view him as a kid, and he is now in danger. And that's where, you know, I need to do, together with my family, whatever is possible to help him, bring him back home and be back with us. Itai specifically joined the IDF about 1.5 years ago. He serves in the Armed Corps and was stationed at a base on the border of Gaza next to Nahal Oz. Just to set the stage for the audience, Itai and his team were in protection mode, protecting a sovereign part of the state of Israel, a part of Israel that is not in some sort of international conflict, protecting agriculture villages, what we call kibbutzes, such as Nir Oz, people that work the land, people that try to make ends meet, and people that tend to mind their own business, and that also was the case of Itai. We got a notification from him that Saturday, 6:30 in the morning, that the base is under attack. We knew that they tried to be functional somehow, but contact was lost with him and his team at 9 a.m. Initially, we had no idea what was going on. You know, we thought, like most Israelis, that this is something that we've seen before. But as the information started coming out, and when trying to get in contact with him or his team over phone, we understood that something was different, much different. And we frantically trying to communicate with anyone else that was around the base and understand what was going on. If you know, the base Nahal Oz had a lot of female soldiers as well. That was under immense attack. There was a lot of chaos, and it was very difficult to understand what his status is. I don't know how many of you have kids, but it's hard to describe the feeling of not knowing if your kid is alive or not. It's something beyond pain. I don't think the word exists in the vocabulary, but we had no idea what his status was. We went to the police headquarters where we wanted to get a better understanding what was going on a day after, on Monday, and were notified that Itai is defined as missing in action, meaning nobody could identify him in the field. He was not in any hospital, not in any of the deceased lists. And 4 days afterwards, we got a knock on the door, and on the other side of the door there were two army officials. Again, not knowing if you understand what that means, but that means that someone's going to give you a very bad message. You don't want to open that door. Your heart stops, and you know at the end you need to open that door. And that, I would not want my worstest enemies to have that type of feeling. We opened the door. It was 6 a.m. in the morning, and we are the lucky ones, where the notification that we got is that Itai was abducted, kidnapped, and held by the Hamas terrorist organization in Gaza. So I should say thank you that, that is the notification that I got, and not the other notification that many others received that day. My ask, my demand, we unfortunately have not been given any sign of life, as many other families. We have demanded the International Red Cross to be able to enter and provide not just an indication who is being held hostage, but also what is their medical status and provide medical attention. I think it's important to remind everyone, we have here people from different countries, that we have something in common. We walk this planet together, if we like it or not. And because of that, civilized communities, civilized nations have defined different protocols, how to act, even in times of conflict. One of those is the demand that the International Red Cross be able to function and be able to visit hostages that were kidnapped against their will. And I think that this is a topic that the international community should be focused on, and ask Hamas if they see themselves as part of the people walking this planet together or not. If they do, then they should immediately provide that access. And if not, then they view themselves, I guess, maybe like ISIS. And that's how they should be portrayed. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Ruby. Thank you, Noam. Thank you, Nadav. You can't get used to these stories. Not ever. I would like us to continue to the next phase of this conversation of questions and answers. And it would be in order, everyone who has an answer, please raise your hand on the Zoom. I would also like to say that we are recording this conversation for your use afterwards. It will be published on the WhatsApp group of our official updates. So if you're not there, we have just put the link. It's right there in the general chat. So the first question is by Hazel. Please specify to whom it's directed. Let's go.
Hi, good morning. And just thank you so much for coming forward and sharing with us. It's invaluable to hear your personal stories. My question is to Noam. Are you able to share with us what the sign of life was that the people that came back yesterday shared with you about your father? And the second question also to Noam is, knowing your father as you do, what do you think he's been doing all this time that he's been away? What in your mind can you see him doing? Thank you.
So for the first question, I can't specify the details, but I can say that same as we saw on the first release of Yocheved and Nurit 4 weeks ago, we know some of the hostages were together, so we were able to understand also then when they were released, and also now that some of them has seen my father and he's alive. And knowing my father, it was my wish to think that he's with his friends, because my father, he's a man of art and philosophy, and he has vast knowledge of all things you can think about. So my prayer is that he has friends to talk to. He was taken without his glasses. I was at Nir Oz 4 days ago. I saw the safe room. It was kept as it was, and I was able to see his glasses with the newspaper on the sofa where he sat with my mother, at least at the beginning when they still had electricity and he could read. So I know he can't read, which is the thing he does all the time. So I'm just hoping he has someone to talk to. And if I know he's with his friends, I'm sure they're talking about art and history and the filming and movies. My father has taught before, and he was one of the founders of Sapir College near the Gaza Strip, and he taught many students about writing and movies and the filming industry. And I'm sure this is what he's talking with his friends. I'm hoping, at least this is how he spend the time, because they can't do nothing else, I guess.
Thank you very much, Noam. Thank you, Hazel. Next question goes to Ms. Parker.
Hi there. Thanks so much for doing this. I have a question also for Noam about the kind of life that you got. Can you share, are you able to share with us who notified you of that? Was it members of the IDF, the government? I know the Ministry of Social Work has been involved. Just trying to understand sort of for the future as well, kind of what will be the process for notifying families if, you know, hostages have shared that their loved one is alive.
So again, I can't share any details, and we're still waiting for formal notification. I'm sure we're going to get some, but it's very early on. It will take probably hours. I'm willing to share back if I have any formal information that I can share. So still very early hours. I'm just, I'm thinking, and I'm also thinking about people. We're so happy for everyone who comes back, but in the same time, we feel, my father and others that might see those people coming out and are left behind. And we have this obligation of keep telling to the world that they're alive, they're there, and we need to act, and we need to act soon to get them out.
Thank you very much, Noam. Next question goes to Ms. Inga Rog.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for doing this. As you said, I'm Inga Rog. I'm working for Swiss newspapers, Swiss Weekly, NZZ on Sunday. And my question would be to Ruby. Ruby, you have mentioned the ICRC, who has a very
the international Red Cross. That goes back to my question to the
in front of the door. For example, did someone see that your son was abducted? Did you hear how it happened? And the second would be if you would be so kind and share a little bit of how you go through these terrible days, like through everyday life as a family. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for the question, Sabina. The Army has some indication about Itai's whereabouts, and based on those indications was able to pinpoint his location in Gaza. That's why the notification was such. There are some that were notified missing with no indication where exactly it's missing, so we did get that indication from the IDF. But beyond that, we do not have any type of indication of sign of life or what has happened to him since October 7th. Unfortunately, the segment or sub-segments of hostages that the IDF does not have nearly any information on the whereabouts is not a small sub-segment, which is highly frustrating, difficult to cope. I think all of us have a new type. We live in a different universe. Believe me, you do not want to live in my universe, where we need to think, what can we do in order to be productive? And you do not know if today is a marathon or is it a sprint, because something is happening. And even in between the day, thinking, okay, is the next hour the marathon stage, or is it a sprint that we need to kind of ask ourselves at the end of the day, after working for 18, 19, 20 hours before you feel exhausted and you fall asleep? I ask myself a very simple question with a very difficult answer. Have I been productive? Have I been able to move my son's beliefs an inch? And you don't have a good answer to that question, which is mind-boggling, to say the least. So there's no daily routine, but there is the desire to try to move this forward somehow, and hopefully having you to amplify that message and the pain that the families are in to get, the families whole again. You know, we are not talking about anything else, but as families and wanting our family members back.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruby. We have time for two last questions. So the next one would be by Miss Jenna Berries. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, thanks a lot. Thanks for this initiative, and may please let me wish you all and all the other relatives of the hostages that you shall have very soon good news of their release in good physical and mental health and emotional health. I think this question should be addressed mainly to Noam and Nadav. Where do you think the dream of peace and peaceful coexistence, which in case of your father, Noam, was, I understand, an integral part of his life, of his activity, and Nadav, for the very fact that your family lives there. I know the whole area is conceived as one really moved by the idea of peaceful coexistence. Where is that left now, in your opinion? If you may, both of you answer, I'd be grateful. Thank you very much.
Do you want me to start?
Yes.
So I haven't mentioned, but I was also born and raised in Nir Yitzhak. And for the better part of my life, the situation was always very tense and very uneasy in a way, because you never know when the next attack of missiles is gonna come. I think I know for my father for a fact, and for pretty much the rest of the people that lives in the area of the Gaza Strip, in the Israeli side, it's 99% heaven and 1% hell. And I think on October 7th, it became the opposite. And the fact of the matter is that I don't know how we're gonna come back to that, but I know for a fact that we are going to go back to live there in one way or another. Some of the settlements, some of the kibbutzes is gonna take more time than others. Fortunately, in Nir Yitzhak, the damages and the destruction was not as bad as Nir Oz or Be'eri or Kfar Aza and Nachal Oz. And still the trauma is ongoing for the past 25 years. The wish is to live there in peace and without having to worry that every time there is a missile attack or another attack, of the safety of my beloved ones. My father's family still live in the kibbutz. They came from Argentina when my dad was 7 years old, and since then they've been living in the kibbutz. So I think the belief and the want of everyone that lives there is to live in peace. And as Ruby said, we are simple people. We didn't ask for anything out of this conflict and the war. And Israel is the only place that we have as Jewish people to have that peace, and we still haven't gotten it after a lot of years that Israelis exist.
I can just add to what Nadav has said that the community of Nir Oz has went through a terrible, terrible massacre. If you haven't been there, I urge you to come and see it. Just because, unfortunately, you are the people who needs to tell it to the world. it's hard to imagine. And even though I saw the pictures before, it didn't prepare me to what I saw when I visited there this week. There is almost no house left untouched in Nir Oz. Everything is burned. And I know most of the people there. I can look at the house and say, this family's house, it's burned. I know what happened to the people inside. And going like this house by house makes you think that they can be as, the people are the same people. They want to live, as Nadav said, peacefully with the world. But obviously, it depends on the other side as well, and what type of government would be there. So it's very early on, and I wish I could say something about the future of this area and of peace, but it clearly is different from everything that we saw before, from everything that we saw in I would say, the history of the Jewish people since the Holocaust.
Thank you, Nadav. Thank you. And thank you, Nadav and Noam, for the answers. Last question would be by Miss Chloe Cornish.
Thank you all so much for taking the time to talk to us today. I thought of you all so much yesterday as we were waiting to see who would be released. And I was wondering if you had been given any indication by the government about the order in which people who are being held captive might be released. Have you been given kind of any rhyme or reason as to who might be released when? And have they explained to you how they're approaching the negotiations? And this question is to anyone who'd like to take it.
Yeah, unfortunately, the government doesn't have a clue. Hamas decides who it wants to release. And I think we need to remember, Chloe, at the end, each and every one of them is a human being, regardless if he's female, male, 88, civilian, soldier. So, at the end, I think for all of us, the families, it's less of an issue. It's an issue of getting everybody back.
Just adding to that, getting everybody back alive and soon. And alive and soon are connected to each other.
Absolutely. Okay, so with this, we will conclude this conversation. I would like to deeply thank all the family members who took the time to share their experiences and their perspectives with us. And thank you again, all of you reporters, for doing your important job in telling the world exactly what is going on here. This means the world to us. So really deeply thank you on the behalf of all the family forum. I would like to say again that we put in the chat the link to our WhatsApp group of the official updates where you can keep yourself updated with everything that is initiated by the headquarters. Also, the link to this recording of this conversation will be uploaded there. We will have another conversation in the same format, but with different families at 2:30 Israel time, which is in 2 hours and 15 minutes from now. So those of you who would like to join that too, you're most welcome. Again, thank you everyone for joining us. We're all hoping for good news and to bring them back home soon, alive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
of us doing that is to promote their coming back here as soon as possible, not to mention now, alive and well. So we're trusting you to carry this message to this world. And yeah, we will begin. I will also mention just before I hand Noam the microphone that this conversation is recorded, and we will send you the WhatsApp link to the update group where we are publishing it. So you're more than welcome to use this recording afterwards. And we also ask you kindly to send us the links of the publications. I will write you my phone number to which you can send this link. And this is it. Thank you again all for joining us. And once again, I will ask you to please open your cameras. It does make a very big difference for all of us. We're here on the human level. We're sharing very deep emotions and stories, and it's important that we do it to faces. So thank you for the cooperation and thank you for being here. The first person to speak today is Noam Alon. He is the boyfriend of Inbar Hyman that was abducted from the party, from the rave of Nova in Re'im. Please, Noam, tell us your story.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here and to hear our stories. I will show you first a picture of Inbar and me, just to see her face before we start. Inbar, she's 27 years old, the best person that I know. She's funny and clever and sensitive and talented. We are both students for graphic design and art in Haifa. We were supposed to begin the last year of the degree, actually 1 week after the music festival, which of course it didn't happen. Inbar went to the party, to the Nova, in like one night before October 7th. She go on Friday evening. She was there as a caregiver, as a volunteer, to make sure that everybody is doing well. There is a volunteer staff in this kind of festival, so she was one of them. When I woke up in October 7th, a friend called me in 10 a.m. He asked me if I heard about the news, that there is a terror attack, and of course I had no clue. I looked online, I saw there is a terror attack from Gaza. In one of the articles there was a video of hundreds of people running for their lives in a field, and it wasn't obvious. It wasn't clear what is going on. It was chaos at that moment. And I know that Inbar was supposed to be in a party. I didn't know that it's in Re'im. I know she was supposed to be in the Nova, and I tried to call her and she didn't answer, and I become a bit stressed and tried to call again and send her a message, and she didn't reply, unfortunately. And I called one of her friends, and he told me that he didn't spoke with her, but he know that Inbar, that a party that is under attack is the Nova. And when he said the name Nova, I knew that she's there, and I was very scary. And like then following day was a nightmare. Like we didn't have a clue what's going on with her and with her friends and with everybody there. And I think like all of October 7th, all of this Saturday, we thought perhaps she's still hiding, perhaps she was murdered. Like the option that she was kidnapped wasn't like my first guess, but in the next day, like there was so many videos, propaganda videos from Hamas showing kidnapping and executions and horrible stuff that I'm sure you all heard about. And in one of those videos, I didn't watch it personally, my parents watched it and friends, and like they describe everything. Inbar is seen there, taken, dragged by 4 terrorists. We know from the video it's not easy to watch, that's why I didn't watch it, but they blur their face, they put an emoji on her face, but we can still recognize her, identify through her clothes. So we definitely know that it's her. We know that she is alive. We know that there is a chance that she was injured, but we cannot know how bad. But we do believe that she is alive. And yeah, since then, like, we understood that she was kidnapped. There was also one testimonial from two Israelis that were in the moment that she was kidnapped. They managed to escape, but they saw her taken. They described her that she ran with them for kilometers together. They saw like so many horrors there and dead bodies, and in some point she couldn't run anymore. The terrorists chased after them, and she froze and she started to cry, and they described that she was taken by the terrorists without any resist. They took her on a motorbike, and later on, like, we don't know how much time later the video was taken, but we saw it on Sunday, and therefore we know that she was kidnapped. And you know, these 50 days are the worst days in my life, in Bar Spen's life. For anyone who know in Bar, it's a disaster. We just want to see her with us again, to hug her. I cannot imagine what she's been through in October 7 in the next following 50 days. It's really, I cannot sleep, and you know, every moment since then I'm trying to do everything to bring her back. If it's by the march that we made, and we are sleeping in the tents in front of the military base nearly for 1 month, I think now, and we are giving interviews and doing everything we can. It's important to me to speak about Inbar as a person, as a girlfriend, as a friend, as an artist. She's an amazing person. Like, I'm sure that no one is deserved to happen this nightmare, but I care so much about her, and I'm so worried for her, and I think about what she might been through while we are speaking, and it's scary. It's really scary. I just want to see her back as soon as possible. We see the deal now, but we also know that the chances that in the next days we see women and men from the music festival will be freed are not so high. And I'm glad for each person that returned to his family. All the families should be united, and all the hostages will be freed today. We cannot wait any longer. So I'm glad to see families. I always, like in the last month, I get to know so many of the families of the hostages, and now a friend of mine that his grandmother Yafa Adar was kidnapped. She's free now, and I'm so happy for him and for her and for all of their family. It's really, there are not a lot of moments when we can smile, and to see her back with her grandson, it's something special, and I want to have the same with Inbar. I want every family to have the same. So we are glad for every hostage that was got freed, but we are expecting to see everyone freed. We want that our government to do everything to continue the deal, and we hope that the efforts of the US and the international community will make it work, that we will see the deal goes on and on and on till everybody will be freed in any price. That's what must happen now, that the deal will continue, and we will see more and more families will return to their loved one. There is any questions or more things should be talked about?
Let's first of all, thank you very much, Noam. The questions will be afterwards. You really can't get used to those stories, and thank you very much for sharing this with us. Before we move on to Moran, I would like to ask everyone who's participating in this conversation to please turn on your cameras. We would like to see your faces. It's important to us. Please turn them on. Doesn't matter if you're in your car or what situation you're at. Okay, turn it on. We want to see your faces. Thank you. We appreciate it, and we appreciate you being here very much. So the next, thank you again, Noam. The next person to speak would be Moran Tayal, whose nephew Yegev and his wife Rimon were abducted from Nirim, Kibbutz Nirim. Please, Moran, go ahead.
First, thank you for giving us this platform to tell our beloved one story. It's very important to us that it will never become numbers and will never stay as names and numbers, but that each one of you and each all the civilians of the world, the citizens of the world, will know the stories and the personalities behind the numbers and behind the names. They are actually or literally buried alive in some tunnel out there in Gaza. Nobody's seen them, nobody knows them, nobody know anything, while we hopefully not, but you know, on that Saturday, on October 7th, it was literally the terrorists entered and they literally act as, you know, crime against humanity. They went, in our stories, they went into Kibbutz Nirim, where Yegev and Rimon are living as a young couple, 2 years of marriage, with their dogs, with their cats. Two young people that all their ambition in this world is to bring peace, to bring the people to love one each other, bring people to love pets, wounded and abandoned animals, to live quietly and peacefully. And this is only their only ambition. On that Saturday, our life stopped. All the family stopped living. I'm the aunt of Yegev, and Rimon, his wife. And since then, the family can't sleep, the family can't eat. The parents are running all the time to be active, to never quit, you know, never stop walking or running or interviewing or traveling, in order to never have time to think. When I'm telling the mother of Yegev, sit a bit, just relax a bit, she's telling me, but I can't, because if I will sit for a minute, I will die, because the thoughts, the movies that will run in my head, I can't live with that. So I'm running, I'm not eating, I'm not sleeping, and I'm active, and she's active all the time in order to bring her son and his wife back home. On that Saturday morning, at 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:30 in the morning, there were the red signal alarm in Kibbutz Nirim, as well as in 22 other kibbutzes and cities in the south of Israel. All my family went into their shelter, their safe room. And then we text them, I'm living in the center of Israel, and we text them if everything is okay. And they said, yes, it's okay. But after 20 minutes or even 10 minutes, they wrote us back, it's not the same. There are something very, very bad going on inside the kibbutz. We hear light gunshot, not the missile, the regular missiles that they used to have 20 years now from Gaza. And then we start texting, and all the time they said, yes, there are terrorists around their house. The parents, the grandmother, and also Yegev and Rimon said that. They even posted it on the Facebook. And then these messages continue and continue, but the last one was 8:30 in the morning, when Rimon sent a voice memo to her mom saying they are here, meaning the terrorists from the Hamas, from ISIS, are here next to our house. They are shooting at us. I'm afraid. I'm sorry that I can't protect you, her mom living in the next kibbutz, Magen, and saying in the end, I love you. And that was the last time we heard from Yegev and Rimon. However, 8 or 9 hours later, when the army and the parents went, the army took over of the kibbutz, and the parents and the army went to see, and the IDF went to see the flat of Yagev and Rimon. They saw that there were shooting signs on the floor, not on the wall, and there were signs of struggle, and the windows are broken, but there were no sign of them murdered. And this and the sign that they shot on the floor said that they wanted to scare them, but not to kill them. So it meant for us, we assumed then that they were kidnapped, but they are alive. And about 3 weeks ago, we had the sign that approved our assumptions. While Rimon were on the movie, the last video that the Hamas, I don't know if it's the last, but the second video that the Hamas released were 3 women, one, I'm very happy for her, that released yesterday. There was one woman on the middle and Rimon was on the left side. And for us, it approved. The only thing I can say about that that video is that Rimon and Yagev were kidnapped alive, and they are alive, and we are urging all over the world. We are traveling. We are taking interviews. We are meeting important people and influential and artists and businessmen and whoever can help us to bring them back home. I just want to add another thing, and it's, it's been 50 days since they were kidnapped. And in that 50 days, all the families are traveling, talking, interviewing, whatever it needs to do. And in any interview we are taking, wherever we are in the world, we are asking everybody